The war on cash, state-sanctioned theft? You're not going to want to miss this. Stay tuned. Welcome. Now we're talking about the war on cash today, and we're going to get into a little bit of what that means. I know you've been hearing the terms. War on cash is something that's kind of in the, I guess, the circles, especially for precious metals type companies, but it's a little bit of a different spin. I'm referring to the concept in a, well, Luciferian and spiritual term as well. Now, plenty of those people can debate this, I'm sure. But for those in the kingdom, this is really not debatable. We are talking about global socialist order. It is what it is. It's not just a theory or an ideological difference. It's Luciferian because it's about oppression and suppressing your freedom and taking from you to the point where communism then kills you. And it's about taking your God. Now, they patronize you, but it's about taking your God and your Bible. And what does Lucifer want from all of us? Our authority, or our known authority, and the power and the shed blood of Jesus Christ, right? So if he can get us to just kind of get into religion and allow the state to do this to us, we may just lay down and take it, and then we have no authority. But remember what the Bible says, behold, Luke 10:19, I give you authority to trample serpent and scorpion, aka demon, and over all the power of the enemy. Now, that's what the Luciferians are afraid of. I think that's why. Now, I really don't like the politic term, but conservative, probably only because they're more attached to maybe the authority of the blood of Christ. But believe me, there's plenty of conservative that is just as bad taking us down that rabbit hole as anybody else. So it's not a politic thing. It is a spiritual thing in a Luciferian order of a global order. So war on cash isn't what they're telling you. They're telling you it's about terrorism. It's about crime. It's about money laundering. Now, to some extent, that's true. But when you actually look at the statistics globally of what cash is involved in global crime, it is so infinitesimally small, forget it. It's not, that's not the real reason, because it's just too tiny of a reason to change the whole order. They're doing it for control. Now, I call it a state-sanctioned theft. Now, why would that be the case? Number one, it goes into your IRAs, goes into your savings. What about your privacy? We talked about that with the whole Bitcoin and the cryptocurrency angle. What is that for your savings? You see, because the war on cash, ideally, is the banks become slave masters and the overlords of we the people. All of our supposedly hard-earned wealth is going into a banking system, and they can then force you to buy or sell to get the economy going or slow it down, but you won't be allowed to hang on to your wealth. And so for me, more than anything else in this whole idea of the war on cash is, number one, freedom. Because if they can control your money, they control you. They control what you eat, they control what you do, what you see, and what you hear. We're already seeing a problem, folks, in the mainstream media. They just flat out lie, and somehow it's okay. Matter of fact, for many of you that have seen the movie Left Behind, in Left Behind, they were in a United Nations roundtable of all the political heads. And Kirk Cameron at the time was seeing. He was still spiritually in tuned, and he could see clearly what was going on. Rest of them were in the trance, like the Luciferian trance. So Nikolai goes around the table, and one of the gentlemen wasn't really complying with what Nikolai wanted. So he shoots the guy in the head and then says out loud to the group at the table, "Isn't that terrible that he killed himself?" And all of the people were like, "Yeah, that was terrible. He killed himself." Well, only Kirk Cameron looked at it and said, "Oh my God, Nikolai shot him." But they were deceived. They couldn't see because they were under the cloud of the Luciferian. And this is kind of what's taking place right now. I contend in the mainstream media, I see it enough. They're flat out lying about things all the time, and people actually take it and believe it. So you have somebody committing heinous crimes, Hillary Clinton, and getting away with it, and then you have others doing very small infractions and going to jail. It's a mindset of blindness. Now, I say that not in the context of politics, even though that just astonishes me. It's because that's how they're going to fool us with our money and our finances. That is how they're going to condition you that a cashless society is somehow good for you. Terrorism. Oh, that's interesting. So if we have cashless society, we won't have terrorists, right? Huh. That's why ISIS was using oil to make money. You see, there's always something. It's just silly to say that. Now, is there true crime, money laundering, tax evasion? Of course. But it's so small that that's not the reason they're going for the war on cash. It's because they need control of you. And more importantly, they need control of the budget. Meaning they need to just print into infinity this fake paper money system. Now, I don't believe we're stopping it, folks. I just don't. You can go look at the completely entranced the Swedish people. They're done. That country is done. They're allowing Islam to rampantly take over. They're done. They're on the verge of cashless society as it is. Look at the society. I've been there. When I was in the Army back in the day, when I was in Germany, I went to Sweden a few times. Beautiful people, beautiful culture. They're already hawking the culture of the Vikings, for Pete's sake, to appease the socialist order, just like we're doing here with monuments and such. It's all a narrative with no basis of what they're saying as an argument. It's truly about the one world currency, one world order. Socialism is what it really is about. But why in the war on cash then, who benefits from this? Well, lo and behold, Visa. The banking system, right? Visa, what do they get? Oh yeah, a tax on every transaction, as they call a few points in the system. Just as we're already taxed on state tax for goods and services, and now Visa gets their points. Think about it. Visa was actually offering incentives to restaurants and companies, a lot of money to some of them, if they would basically disallow cash. Think about that. I mean, you're talking about the bankers. Folks, there's good people in banking, don't get me wrong. I actually find most people that work at the bank branches, bank managers, even as high up as a VP, most have zero clue about the fiat currency system. They have no idea. It's a blindness. We are being led down a rabbit hole that you will never recover if you do not properly protect and preserve your assets. We in the kingdom are going to be here for resilience in the end to fight. Don't let the pricing system of precious metals bother you. Precious metals are phenomenal for the protection of your assets because they're tangible, constitutional money, by the way, and biblical sources of money. Why? Proverbs 11:1, dishonest weight and measures. It's an abomination to the Lord. That's this fiat currency system. Tangible assets like silver, for instance. 31 grams. You can't fake it, you can't make it, you see. That's why God established that. He wants honest scales. I'm really saying we can't stop this, but if we're in the right place as a kingdom and we're involved in tangible assets, we will be here to continue the mission of the ministries and the churches. So know that the war on cash is legitimate. And here are some examples. I want to kind of go into it a little bit of some examples of how we can, so you know that it's not just me saying it or somebody saying it. Let me give you some real world examples of our trading partners and here in the United States. But before I do that, let me take a quick break.
Terrorism, a volatile stock market, rising food costs, natural disasters. Every day our economy is at risk, but your assets should not be. Cornerstone Asset Metals is here to help you protect and preserve what you have worked so hard to gain. Whether you have IRAs to protect, 401ks to preserve, or cash in the bank, our accredited asset management specialists are here to support you. Call now and we'll send you urgent information regarding changes to the dollar and challenges to our economy that you need to be prepared for. Learn how easy it is to roll over your current IRA or 401k into a physical precious metals IRA. We can even arrange to have your precious metals stored in a private vault or send it directly to your home. Do not delay. Call 888-747-3309 or register online at cornerstoneassetmetals.com today. Invest in precious metals and create security in your future today. Call now.
Welcome back. So for the first example I want to show you in the war on cash is over in Europe. Now, again, they use the narrative that it's crime, it's terrorism. That's just flat out not true, folks, because they use other means of cash and currency. For instance, a lot of terrorism was being done by using PayPal, for Pete's sake. So the thing is, you have to understand this is an argument of stealing away your freedom more than it is an actual concern of criminal activity. Now, the one example would be the 500 note euro note. Just recently, this was done. The European Union said we're going to eliminate the 500 euro note, and it's going to fight crime because it's such a large note, they could store up millions in a duffel bag. So if we take away the large denominated notes, then it's a lot harder to stash $20 bills in a duffel bag and do your crime. This is the logic we're getting fed here. That's not exactly the truth, though. You ready for this? Here is a graph of the actual currency in circulation in Europe. And if you've noticed, the 500 note was 30% of all the currency. So what Europe essentially did was eliminate 30% of the currency in circulation overnight. Think about that. Less paper currency, the more we're dependent on credit cards, the more the psychology reduces to credit cards, debit cards, you see. They didn't do that for criminal activity. They did that to slowly shrink the ability of people to have private transaction. Now, we say here in the United States, oh, that's not possible though. Well, if you could see the real hack job, psychologically deranged Larry Summers and Rogoff, which is some Harvard professor, and look at what they're saying about our currency and what they're saying about the $100 bill. They want to go cashless too. I hear the arguments, and it's like that Nikolai experiment. I'm like, do you really believe this? But look at this. We got the $100 bill, right? $100 bill. They want to eliminate it. Now, Larry Summers has been advocating it on and off. Rogoff writes books about it, for Pete's sake. Matter of fact, I'm not sure anything comes out of Harvard that's decent anymore. You know, under the Luciferian world, they're probably superior. But in the spiritual world, when there's awareness, I'm seeing bad news stuff. So let me go here. This $100 bill. Look at this chart now of the United States currency in circulation. There it is. Now, the purple is your $100 bill. Amazing, isn't it? The blue is your 50, and then your 20s and your 10. Look at the 20s and 10 in circulation. It's almost nothing. And the $50 bill is almost nothing. If they succeed, those hacks for Lucifer succeed in taking away our $100 bill, I promise you folks, you're 1 second away from a cashless United States. And once that's the case, you are a slave to the system. You have no more freedom. And I know people talk about this and they act like, well, it's far off, it's not happening. I'm telling you, it's so close, it's scary. Now, I think it would have changed dramatically if the politics in our country would have went the other way this election, because they would have promoted, Larry Summers is an advocate for the Clintons, they would have probably pushed that narrative more. So we got a little reprieve, but folks, it's not stopping. It's just the way it is. We're going down the road where we will lose our ability to have freedom in our money. That's why I'm an advocate of things like physical silver, because physical silver is an industrial metal. It's not gold like a tier 1 asset. So physical silver you can own, you can bury it in the backyard, you can sell it off when you need to, but it's not being controlled. And now people say, well, why not confiscate silver? It's almost impossible, because silver is used in everything we do, from television, cell phones, you name it, medical, biotechnology, medical equipment, it goes on and on. The point is, in the cashless society, the $100 bill gets eliminated, we're done. And they're trying. Now, they keep floating the balloons, but it doesn't mean they succeed, but they're floating the balloons, meaning they're testing the water. All it's going to take is a political swing to make it happen. And so I'm just saying, be cautious and be prepared, because in the kingdom, if we lose our flexibility, what else are we going to have? They even advocated taking away tax exemption for churches, for Pete's sake, on the other side. So you got to keep that in mind. So do understand that the U.S. $100 bill in circulation is pretty much $1 trillion. Well, now, in this, it's about 78% of the circulation. So $1 trillion of the printed currency in the United States. Oh, let me make that one, checkmate that. Not the United States, the world. $100 bills is $1 trillion of it, 78% are hundreds. Now, the reason I kind of had some fun with that, the world, folks, we barely have 600 billion in currency notes in the United States. 600 billion, that's it, barely. I don't even think that many. Most of it is overseas. Central banks, it's in private hands. Most of the printed U.S. currency notes, which is a debt obligation note, is overseas. In the United States, we just keep recirculating the same few hundred billion. That's it. Talk to your friends. Ask how many actually have currency on them. To me, I find that astonishing that you don't carry currency. Because what happens if, God forbid, the electric grid goes down, or terrorism, and you have no money? You're fully 100% responsible. What happens to your retirement if that happens? I'm ex-nuclear in the United States Army. I had NATO secret clearance. And I can tell you, EMPs, electromagnetic pulse, is an extremely real concern. Now, they say that about North Korea. I don't believe any of that for nothing, although who knows. But if North Korea happens, it's a world war because of how many people would be annihilated instantly. So tragic. But an EMP is real. We get an EMP, folks, where's your wealth? Where's your savings? You see? So we have to be mindful of this. And if you're going to have currency, you better have it outside the banking system, because anything in the bank isn't yours. I just suggest, since paper burns, that you have it at least in a fireproof box. Because silver doesn't burn, it's not a problem. It's such a high temperature to be difficult to do. So for folks in the United States, they wonder, that's okay, that's maybe possible. Maybe in the future, long way away. Or is it? Here, Louisiana has made it illegal to use cash for second-hand sales. That's right, a second-hand dealer shall not enter into any cash transaction in payments for the purchase of junk or used or second-hand property. Payment shall be made in the form of a check, electronic transfer, money order issued to the seller of the junk or used second-hand property and made payable to the name and address of the seller. All payments made by check, electronic transfer, or money order shall be reported separately in a daily report required by RS 37-1866. That's a law in Louisiana. That's just the beginning, folks. They're floating the balloon, the trial balloon of getting it done. And it's we, the people, that are in the crosshairs. It's we, the people, that they're going after. They're not going after it for some terrorism or some crime, folks. They're going after it for control. And the irony, they're going after it for control of the least able to fight back. The least able to fight back. I and we here at Wealth Transfer are about educating you to be ready and available for the eyes and ears to be open to receive the information, so when the wealth from the wicked of the world is transferred into the hands of we the people, we can be here for the church and for those that need it. So I'm going to take a quick break. We'll be right back.
Terrorism, a volatile stock market, rising food costs, natural disasters. Every day our economy is at risk, but your assets should not be. Cornerstone Asset Metals is here to help you protect and preserve what you have worked so hard to gain. Whether you have IRAs to protect, 401ks to preserve, or cash in the bank, our accredited asset management specialists are here to support you. Call now and we'll send you urgent information regarding changes to the dollar and challenges to our economy that you need to be prepared for. Learn how easy it is to roll over your current IRA or 401k into a physical precious metals IRA. We can even arrange to have your precious metals stored in a private vault or send it directly to your home. Do not delay. Call 888-747-3309 or register online at cornerstoneassetmetals.com today. Invest in precious metals and create security in your future today. Call now.
Welcome back. So now we talked about the war on cash. Now, it is legitimate, and I know you sense a little bit of kind of sarcasm or spankiness from time to time from me. You know, I am an on fire, God-loving, Holy Spirit-loving individual, but I also know very well the Luciferians. And when I say that, and when I talk even from the socialist angle, I just want you to understand, it's not politics, even though one happens to favor that more than the other. It's a Luciferian mindset, and it doesn't mean they're doing it on purpose. Some really, really good people are involved like that, and they're just being used by Lucifer. They're in a trance. They don't even get it because they don't even understand. Remember, ignorance is defined as just ignoring truth. And if you're not being fed truth because the mainstream news and information is mostly fluff or 10% true, you don't know where to go. So I don't blame everybody because it's a very difficult world to survive in, especially when we're not being fed truth. But know the motives are not what they say. And I know we, the people, are going to be in the crosshairs of losing everything if we don't stand up for it and say no. Now, why are they doing this? In the United States, I know I say the global socialist order and the new world currency stuff. That's down the road. I really don't believe in that right this second. I do believe it's coming because the groundwork's being laid. The information's there. But what happened to the United States that made us react? Now, we're going to get into a lot more of this, but I'm going to give you a little teaser today. We're going to talk about China, Russia, the Middle East, and you'll start to understand what took place. The last 8 to 10 years of our country has been in the wrong place politically and global geopolitically. We picked the wrong fights in Ukraine. We supported the rebellions in Syria. Heck, we financed and trained ISIS, who ran around raping women and destroying Christians, and we're responsible. And yet somehow it's supposed to be okay. Weirds me right out. Right down to, Washington Schultz's IT guy from Pakistan who worked for 30 congressional representatives and probably stole numerous secrets they're finding out. And it's like nothing to mainstream. Folks, it's just weird. It is. It's weird, I understand. But why are we so aggressive in the United States? What happened that made us make this move? Unfortunately, I don't blame the last administration completely because, it was a global evolution. They just happened to be the recipient of the bad eggs. And this is why. China was introduced into the IMF, which would be the International Monetary Fund. Now, the IMF is the Western's version of kind of like a global bank. Now, there's a World Bank, I understand. World Bank is different. They're there to feed, or not feed, but to offer loans, for countries that are poor or struggling. The IMF does the same thing. But folks, the IMF is a collection. It's like a group of people, countries, that come together and they donate money. Well, the Chinese have done the same thing. We're not going to get into that, but I am telling you, they did the Asia Infrastructure Investment Bank, which is the mirror of the IMF. They have the New Development Bank, which is the mirror of the World Bank. Wait till you see the details going forward on why the Chinese are able to pull this off. But the IMF had to include China, and especially the Chinese yuan, into the basket of currencies. Now, that's probably already confusing. But let me just kind of wrap it up this way. The United States dollar is not the only currency, reserve currency in the world. We think it is. That's kind of what we were educated on. It's not. The United States dollar is one of a handful of reserve currencies. And there's a few others in there, and I'll get into showing you that. But the United States is only a portion of it, but they're just the largest. Well, last October, the Chinese were put into the IMF basket of reserve currencies. They were elevated to a status of reserve currency capable, and that is huge. Many people just probably looked right over it, but I'm telling you, I believe personally, they needed the Chinese permission to do what they're getting ready to do. There's a global reckoning coming, folks. If you think the stock market can keep going up for 10 years, 15 years, I think you're going to be in for a big surprise. It just doesn't. Everything goes up, comes down. I'm not going to get into the Shemitah. I'm just going to explain that we're way overextended for a really big hurt in the stock market. Even the titles are coming out. I think the stock market's ready for a big problem. I'm like, really? And no kidding, right? The IMF is huge here. Now, here's the timeline of this so you can kind of get an idea. The Chinese yuan had proposed to be in the SDR basket, which is strategic drawing rights, which is that for the IMF. That's kind of what I believe will be the new global currency. They were being denied. Then finally, last October, they accepted them in. Well, if you see here the offshore yuan, soon as they proposed it, the basket, it didn't work. So China says what? I'm devaluing our currency. And by doing so, it harms all sorts of global trade. What happens? The currency collapses. As the currency collapses in the yuan, as you see in this chart there, what happens? That's right. The IMF finally decided we better let them in the SDR basket. So they let them in the SDR basket. So what does China do? They devalue even more, which I love that. They're so in control in certain ways you would be amazed. Then they kind of come back up. The IMF introduced it, but then they finally confirm it into the basket last October. The Chinese yuan is now a reserve currency. Now I'm going to show you, we don't have too much time tonight, but I am going to show you next week the makeup and the breakdown of the reserve currency basket prior to and after the Chinese yuan was put into it. But I can only tell you, Chinese are smart. They're setting up the world to become a dominant global currency. I know the dollar is still king right now, but something's coming. A reckoning is taking place, and a currency reset is involved. There's going to be a rebalance of everything. The Chinese, we needed the Chinese permission to do this, and I believe it goes back to some ancient things with assets and so forth of the elites. So I can't get into that today because we don't have enough time. But I do want to tell you to remain, or let's just say this, I'll pray that you remain wise, that wisdom and understanding follow you, that your eyes and your ears are open to truth, and that you can get your assets protected in the right way. So not just you, your family, your standard of living and quality of life is preserved, but the inheritance to your children and children's children are protected. So until next time, God bless each and every one of you.